The Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, passed by France's National Constituent Assembly in August 1789, is a fundamental document of the French Revolution and in the history of human rights. It defines the individual and collective rights of all the estates of the realm as universal. The Declaration was directly influenced by Thomas Jefferson working with General Lafayette, who introduced it. Influenced also by the doctrine of natural right, the rights of man are held to be universal, valid at all times and in every place, pertaining to human nature itself. It became the basis for a nation of free individuals protected equally by law. It is included in the preamble of the constitutions of both the Fourth French Republic and Fifth Republic and is still current. Inspired in part by the American Revolution, the Declaration was a core statement of the values of the French Revolution and had a major impact on the development of liberty and democracy in Europe and worldwide. History. The inspiration and content of the document emerged largely from the ideals of the American Revolution. The key drafts were prepared by Lafayette, working at times with his close friend Thomas Jefferson, who drew heavily upon the Virginia Declaration of Rights, drafted in May 1776 by George Mason, as well as Jefferson's own drafts for the American Declaration of Independence. In August 1789, Honoré Copyright Mirabeau played a central role in conceptualizing and drafting the Declaration of the Rights of Man. The last article of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the Citizen was adopted on August 26, 1789, by the National Constituent Assembly during the period of the French Revolution, as the first step toward writing a constitution for France. Inspired by the Enlightenment, the original version of the Declaration was discussed by the representatives on the basis of a 24-article draft proposed by the Sixth Bureau, led by JAR Copyright Rami championed de Cycle Copyright. The draft was later modified during the debates. A second and lengthier declaration, known as the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen of 1793 was written in 1793 but never formally adopted. Philosophical and theoretical context. The concepts in the Declaration come from the philosophical and political duties of the Enlightenment, such as individualism, the general will, the social contract as theorized by the French philosopher Rousseau, and the separation of powers espoused by the Baron de Montesquieu. As can be seen in the texts, the French Declaration is heavily influenced by the political philosophy of the Enlightenment, by Enlightenment principles of human rights, and with a U.S. Declaration of Independence which preceded it. Thomas Jefferson, primary author of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, was at the time in France as a U.S. diplomat, and worked closely with Lafayette in designing a Bill of Rights for France. In the ratification by the states of the U.S. Constitution in 1788, critics had demanded a written Bill of Rights. In response, James Madison's proposal for a U.S. Bill of Rights was introduced on June 8, 1789 in New York, 11 weeks before the French Declaration. Considering the 6 to 8 weeks it took news to cross the Atlantic, it is possible that the French knew of the American text. But as Lefebvre notes, both texts emerged from the same shared intellectual heritage. The same people took part in shaping both documents. Lafayette admired Jefferson and Jefferson found him useful, writing in 1787 that Lafayette is a most valuable auxiliary to me. His zeal is unbounded, and his weight with those in power, great. Historian Ian MacLean concludes that Jefferson worked hard to influence the French Declaration, and that Lafayette was the ideal tool for Jefferson's unregistered trademark's interest as they broadened from American trade to French politics. The Declaration is in the spirit of secular natural law, which does not base itself on religious doctrine or authority, in contrast with traditional natural law theory, which does. The Declaration defines a single set of individual and collective rights for all men. Influenced by the doctrine of natural rights, these rights are held to be universal and valid in all times and places. For example, men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions may be founded only upon the general good. They have certain natural rights to property, to liberty and to life. According to this theory, the role of government is to recognize and secure these rights. Furthermore, government should be carried on by elected representatives. At the time of writing, the rights contained in the Declaration were only awarded to men. Furthermore, the Declaration was a statement of vision rather than reality. The Declaration was not deeply rooted in either the practice of the West or even France at the time. The Declaration emerged in the late 18th century out of war and revolution. It encountered opposition as democracy and individual rights were frequently regarded as synonymous with anarchy and subversion. The Declaration embodies ideals and aspirations towards which France pledged to struggle in the future. Substance: the Declaration is introduced by a preamble describing the fundamental characteristics of the rights which are qualified as being natural, unalienable and sacred, and consisting of simple and incontestable principles on which citizens could base their demands. In the second article, the natural and imprescriptible rights of man are defined as liberty, property, security and resistance to oppression. It called for the destruction of aristocratic privileges by proclaiming an end to feudalism and to exemptions from taxation, freedom and equal rights for all human beings, and access to public office based on talent. The monarchy was restricted, and all citizens were to have the right to take part in the legislative process. Freedom of speech and press were declared, and arbitrary arrests outlawed. The Declaration also asserted the principles of popular sovereignty, in contrast to the divine right of kings that characterized the French monarchy, and social equality among citizens. All the citizens, being equal in the eyes of the law, are equally admissible to all public dignities, places, and employments, according to their capacity and without distinction other than that of their virtues and of their talents, eliminating the special rights of the nobility and clergy. Articles: men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions may be founded only upon the general good. The aim of all political association is the preservation of the natural and imprescriptible rights of man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. The principle of all sovereignty resides essentially in the nation. No body nor individual may exercise any authority which does not proceed directly from the nation. Liberty consists in the freedom to do everything which injures no one else. Hence the exercise of the natural rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to the other members of the society the enjoyment of the same rights. These limits can only be determined by law. Law can only prohibit such actions as are hurtful to society. Nothing may be prevented which is not forbidden by law, and no one may be forced to do anything not provided for by law. Law is the expression of the general will. Every citizen has a right to participate personally, or through his representative, in its foundation. It must be the same for all, whether it protects or punishes. All citizens, being equal in the eyes of the law, are equally eligible to all dignities and to all public positions and occupations, according to their abilities, and without distinction except that of their virtues and talents. No person shall be accused, arrested, or imprisoned except in the cases and according to the forms prescribed by law. Anyone soliciting, transmitting, executing, or causing to be executed, any arbitrary order, shall be punished. But any citizen summoned or arrested in virtue of the law shall submit without delay, as resistance constitutes an offense. The law shall provide for such punishments only as are strictly and obviously necessary, and no one shall suffer punishment except it be legally inflicted in virtue of a law passed and promulgated before the commission of the offense. As all persons are held innocent until they shall have been declared guilty, if arrest shall be deemed indispensable, all harshness not essential to the securing of the prisoner's person shall be severely repressed by law. No one shall be disquieted on account of his opinions, including his religious views, provided their manifestation does not disturb the public order established by law. The free communication of ideas and opinions is one of the most precious of the rights of man. Every citizen may, accordingly, speak, write, and print with freedom, but shall be responsible for such abuses of this freedom as shall be defined by law. The security of the rights of man and of the citizen requires public military forces. These forces are, therefore, established for the good of all and not for the personal advantage of those to whom they shall be entrusted. A general tax is indispensable for the maintenance of the public force and for the expenses of administration. It ought to be equally apportioned among all citizens according to their means. all the citizens have a right to decide either personally or by their representatives, as to the necessity of the public contribution. To grant this freely. To know to what uses it is put. And to fix the proportion, the mode of assessment and of collection and the duration of the taxes. Society has the right to require of every public agent an account of his administration. A society in which the observance of the law is not assured, nor the separation of powers defined, has no constitution at all. Property being an inviolable and sacred right, no one can be deprived of it, unless demanded by public necessity, legally constituted, explicitly demands it, and under the condition of a just and prior indemnity. Active and passive citizenship. While the French Revolution provided rights to a larger portion of the population, there remained a distinction between those who obtained the political rights in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen and those who did not. Those who were deemed to hold these political rights were called active citizens. Active citizenship was granted to men who were French, at least 25 years old, paid taxes equal to 3 days' work, and could not be defined as servants. This meant that at the time of the Declaration only male property owners held these rights. The deputies in the National Assembly believed that only those who held tangible interests in the nation could make informed political decisions. This distinction directly affects Articles 6, 12, 14, and 15 of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen, as each of these rights is related to the right to vote and to participate actively in the government. With the decree of October 29, 1789, the term active citizen became embedded in French politics. The concept of passive citizens was created to encompass those populations that had been excluded from political rights in the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. Because of the requirements set down for active citizens, the vote was granted to approximately 4.3 million Frenchmen, out of a population of around 29 million. These omitted groups included women, slaves, children, and foreigners. As these measures were voted upon by the General Assembly, they limited the rights of certain groups of citizens while implementing the democratic process of the new French Republic. This legislation, passed in 1789, was amended by the creators of the Constitution of 1795 in order to eliminate the label of active citizen. The power to vote was then, however, to be granted solely to substantial property owners. Tensions arose between active and passive citizens throughout the Revolution. This happened when passive citizens started to call for more rights, or when they openly refused to listen to the ideals set forth by active citizens. This cartoon clearly demonstrates the difference that existed between the active and passive citizens along with the tensions associated with such differences. In the cartoon, a passive citizen is holding a spade and a wealthy landowning active citizen is ordering the passive citizens to go to work. The act appears condescending to the passive citizen and it revisits the reasons why the French Revolution began in the first place. Women, in particular, were strong passive citizens who played a significant role in the revolution. Olympe de Gouges penned her Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen in 1791 and drew attention to the need for gender equality. By supporting the ideals of the French Revolution and wishing to expand them to women, she represented herself as a revolutionary citizen. Madame Roland also established herself as an influential figure throughout the Revolution. She saw women of the French Revolution as holding three roles. Inciting revolutionary action, formulating policy, and informing others of revolutionary events. By working with men, as opposed to working separate from men, she may have been able to further the fight of revolutionary women. As players in the French Revolution, women occupied a significant role in the civic sphere by forming social movements and participating in popular clubs, allowing them societal influence, despite their lack of direct political influence. Women's rights. The Declaration recognized many rights as belonging to citizens. This was despite the fact that after the March on Versailles on October 5, 1789, women presented the Women's Petition to the National Assembly in which they proposed a decree giving women equality. In 1790 Nicolas de Condorcet and Étampes d'Elders unsuccessfully called on the National Assembly to extend civil and political rights to women. Condorcet declared that a euro and he who votes against the right of another, whatever the religion, color, or sex of that other, has henceforth abjured his own euro. The French Revolution did not lead to a recognition of women euro unregistered trademark's rights, and this prompted Olympe de Gouges to publish the Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen in September 1791. The Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen is modeled on the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen and is ironic in formulation and exposes the failure of the French Revolution, which had been devoted to equality. It states that this revolution will only take effect when all women become fully aware of their deplorable condition, and of the rights they have lost in société. The Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen follows the 17 articles of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen point for point and has been described by Camille Nellish as almost a parody of the original document The first article of the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen proclaims that men are born and remain free and equal in rights. Social distinctions may be based only on common utility. The first article of Declaration of the Rights of Woman and the Female Citizen replied, woman is born free and remains equal to man in rights. Social distinctions may only be based on common utility. De Gouges also draws attention to the fact that under French law women were fully punishable, yet denied equal rights, declaring women have the right to mount the scaffold, they must also have the right to mount the speaker unregistered trademark's rostrum. Slavery. The Declaration did not revoke the institution of slavery, as lobbied for by Jacques-Pierre Brichot's Les Amis des Noirs and defended by the group of colonial planters called the Club Massiac because they met at the Hartel Massiac. Despite the lack of explicit mention of slavery in the Declaration, slave uprisings in Saint-Domingue and the Haitian Revolution took inspiration from its words, as discussed in C. L. James' History of the Haitian Revolution, The Black Jacobins. Deplorable conditions for the thousands of slaves in Saint-Domingue, the most profitable slave colony in the world, led to the uprisings which would be known as the first successful slave revolt in the New World. Slavery in the French colonies was abolished by the convention dominated by the Jacobins in 1794. However, Napoleon reinstated it in 1802. The colony of Saint-Domingue became an independent state in 1804. Legacy. The Declaration has also influenced and inspired rights-based liberal democracy throughout the world. It was translated as soon as 1793 1794 by Colombian Antonio Narea ±0, who published it despite the Inquisition and was sentenced to be imprisoned for 10 years for doing so. In 2003, the document was listed on UNESCO's Memory of the World Register. Constitution of the French Fifth Republic. According to the preamble of the Constitution of the French Fifth Republic, the principles set forth in the Declaration have constitutional value. Many laws and regulations have been cancelled because they did not comply with those principles as interpreted by the Conseil constitutionnel or by the Conseil des Permeltat. Taxation legislation or practices that seem to make some unwarranted difference between citizens are struck down as unconstitutional. Suggestions of positive discrimination on ethnic grounds are rejected because they infringe on the principle of equality, since they would establish categories of people that would, by birth, enjoy greater rights. Conspiracy theories. The eye of providence represents the sun shining on the laws and fueled several conspiracy theories, for instance that the French Revolution was caused by occult groups. See also, human rights in France, moral universalism, natural law, natural rights, universality, other early declarations of rights, Magna Carta, Enrichin Articles and Pacta Conventa, Bill of Rights, Claim of Right, Virginia Declaration of Rights, Bill of Rights, Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen of Franquemont. References, Jack Sensor and Lynn Hunt, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, Exploring the French Revolution, University Park, Pennsylvania State University Press, 2001. Susan Dalton, Gender and the Shifting Ground of Revolutionary Politics, The Case of Madame Roland, Canadian Journal of History, 36, No. 2, 259 €83. William Doyle, The Oxford History of the French Revolution, Oxford, Oxford University Press, 1989. Darline Levy and Harriet Applewhite, A Political Revolution for Women? The Case of Paris, in the French Revolution, Conflicting Interpretations. 5th ed. Malabar, Florida. Krieger Pub, Colorado, 2002. 317 €46. Jeremy Popkin, A History of Modern France, Upper Saddle River, Pearson Education, Incorporated, 2006. Active Citizen, Passive Citizen, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, Exploring the French Revolution. Other languages, Giorgio Del Vecchio, La Dar Copyright Declaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen dans la Copyright Volution Sectionnaires, Contributions à la Euro Unregistered Trademark Histoire de la Civilisation Europa Copyright N, Librairie Gar Copyright Na Copyright Rail de Droit et de Jurisprudence, Paris, 1968. Star Copyright Fain Reals, ed., La Dar Copyright Declaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen, Hachette, Paris, 1988, ISBN 2-01-014671-9. Claude Albert Colliard, La Dar Copyright Declaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen de 1789, La Documentation Sectionnaires, Paris, 1990, ISBN 2-11-002329-5. Gar Copyright Rad Konak, Marc Deben, Gar Copyright Rad Thibault, eds., La Dar Copyright Declaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen de 1789. Histoire, Analyse et Commentaires, Economica, Paris, 1993, ISBN 978-2-7178-2483-4. Realino Mara, La Gustazia Panel Neri Principi del 1789, a matriali per una storia della cultura giuridica, XXXIA Euro 2, 2001, 353 Euro 64. External links, Jacques Euro Guillaume Thuret, Report on the Basis of Political Eligibility, Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, Exploring the French Revolution, accessed October 26, 2011. Olympe de Gouges, Declaration of the Rights of Woman, 1791, College of Staten Island Library. Link is broken, a Euro OE Social Causes of the Revolution, a Euro Liberty, Equality, Fraternity, Exploring the French Revolution, accessed October 26, 2011, notes. Further reading, Blackburn, Robin, a Euro OE Haiti, Slavery, and the Age of the Democratic Revolution, a Euro the William and Mary Quarterly, 3rd Series, Volume 63, Number 4, Omohundro Institute of Early American History and Culture, ppA 643 a Euro 74. Dittrich, Horst, actor and translator. Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen translated into Austrian a 1/4 Bertragen, edited by ARBOS, a Euro Company for Music and Theatre, ISBN 978-3-503173-2-9, ARBOS edition, a copyright and a registered trademark 2012, Cates, Gary and Houghton, Olwyn. In Search of Counter-Revolutionary Women. The French Revolution, Recent Debates and New Controversies. London, Routledge, Maclean, Ian. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, and the Dar Copyright Declaration des droits de la Euro Unregistered Trademark Who May Do Citoyen in the Future of Liberal Democracy, Thomas Jefferson in the Contemporary World Online, Smith, George H. Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. In Hamowy, Ronald. The Encyclopedia of Libertarianism. Thousand Oaks, California, Sage. Cato Institute ppA 115 a Euro 7. ISBN A978-1-4129-6580-4. LCCNA 208009151. OCLCA 750831024. Wallerstein, Emmanuel. Citizens All? Citizen Some. The Making of the Citizen. Comparative Studies in Society and History 45, 650. External links, Der Copyright Declaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen de 1789. Conseil Constitutionnel. Retrieved May 14, 2012. De Copyright Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen de 1789. La Copyright Différence. Retrieved May 14, 2012. De Copyright Déclaration des droits de l'homme et du citoyen de 1789. Ministère de la Justice et des Libertés Copyrights are texts and rares per forms. Retrieved May 14, 2012. Declaration of Human and Civic Rights of August 26, 1789. Conseil Constitutionnel. Retrieved May 14, 2012. A.